And we are live, finally. So, with many apologies to the people that were tragically waiting on seeing on me. There's a butchered sentence. Uh, Price I pay for compromising my spiritual purity and going to Windows instead of the true God Linux is that I had to deal with a forced restart at the worst possible time. There we go. Alright, so starting out today, once I get going here, I've got a selection of tabs open where I'm going to be covering some of the signal and the noise surrounding the recent linked Patriot Front videos and groups like Patriot Front in general. So we're going to be taking a look at that. I unfortunately couldn't find my copies of James Wesley Rawls' Patriots or The Black Arrow, which is a wonderful book. But I do have two pieces of generally right-wing fiction. My favorite, L. Neil Smith's Palace, and The Thor Conspiracy, which is a stealth anti-EPA propaganda vehicle that disguises itself as a space race techno-thriller quite cleverly. So, if I can remember how to switch to screen share. I swear I'm a professional streamer. Yay. Alright, and we'll see if the sound carries over and you can hear it properly, but the dialogue isn't as important for these. So we're going to be watching this, we're going to be doing it raw, as the kids say. And we're going to see kind of an imitation of a style of Riot Shield we're going to see again in a minute when we look at some footage from the 2014 protests and insurrection in Ukraine that toppled the pro-Russia government and freed space for real elections. All dressed up in their snazzy colors.
Hey, don't let him in. You're staggering, guys. Cycle back. What are we doing? Cycle back. Right. All right. Should we try that again from the top?
No, I thought I had the sound situation figured out.
Mark! Hey!
So here we have some grainy, crappy footage ripped from Unicorn Riot that shows kind of a lackluster force-on-force operation, like training, with
Help each other out.
some intentionally inept flailing opposition by
Don't let him
handfuls of
pass.
single attackers.
Cycle back. That's perfect.
But the important thing is that they are practicing
Circle.
this basic maneuver, which is peeling off and ducking behind the next rank. Let's see. Oh no, I have bad internet. So we're gonna leave that for now. That'll be momentarily. So as we look at that, we are going to now click back and compare and contrast with, again, I apologize, a fairly low video quality. South Korean riot training. As you can see, there's a pretty considerable difference already. And you've got these guys fluidly practicing for adding weight to the shield roll. Obscured from the front and the and then we're going to go ahead and kill this autoplay. Okay. Alright, testing now. Okay, so obviously I'm not doing a very good job of this. If anyone can hear me now. Oh boy. Oh, I have earphones in, so that should be what's on. How is that? All right, I think the headphones actually were not working, and it was playing over computer audio the entire time, and I didn't notice. Which is the last time I had the opposite problem, which was the video audio would not play, but everyone could hear me. So thank you for hanging with me while I figured that out. And it's embarrassing that I've just been kind of talking into the void this entire time. I'm using Twitch Studio Beta. And I meant to run some test streams and figure my stuff out a little bit more, but I'm actually in the middle of moving. This will be the final Dakota podcast from the podcast shed. There will be a different wall next time you see me, which is very exciting. And I did not take the time to figure out my audio like I should have. So what I was saying that whole time, and hopefully the recording caught it, yeah, very exciting. I'm going to be living actually on my own for the first time in my life. Continuously, I've either been living in whatever weird survivalist household. Yeah, I'm thinking of trying out, I can't remember what the acronym breaks down to, but it's OBS. Yeah, so I've been living in different isolated survival households my whole life, and then after that jumped directly to being, thank you. I actually, finally have my own microphone. This entire time I've been borrowing my very patient sister's microphone that she uses for recording her music. Yeah, and I actually used people paid me money to subscribe to my Substack, even though I don't have any paywall posts, so I was able to buy my own microphone. And I'm now realizing I misread that. I thought you said audio is wonderful, but Herbal Crone is saying alone is wonderful, which, yes. And it's a little bit frightening. I'm moving like 17 minutes away from my house. But it's just different to be living as an independent adult. Yeah. So, what I was saying there, while all that was going on, here we go, was people like to rag on the Patriot Front videos quite a bit, both on the right and left wing, and I'm hoping that the stream recording caught it. Is that people like especially like Reddit liberals, will want to make fun of them because it's kind of milquetoast looking training. That guy's just kind of flailing against the shields. But they're also misunderstanding what they're looking at. They're seeing the gaps and they're like, that's not like the shield walls from my live action role plays in the park. But we saw what the utility of that was in that South Korean police training video. Okay, I might be going offline here for a second. My dog just knocked everything in the world over. Stop that. Your foot up. And part of what I'm excited about this move is I'm going to have a real desk and a space where I can set things up better instead of having that, which is the dog nearly trashing everything by tripping over my power cord because I have to have it stretched across the room. Love you, dog. So, well, we saw the utility of that. They have that loose formation that still keeps the crowd back very well, and they are able to exploit the gaps by sending snap squads forward to grab and arrest protesters and drag them to the back of the line. And over again, they use that loose formation to their advantage to spread out and cover a much wider area while still confronting the mob, and then they form the more traditional phalanx when they have to. And that is what Patriot Front is training for in the videos that have been going everywhere. So what they're trying to do is, like, this is probably like weekend part-time training, because all these people have jobs. What they're trying to do is the drilling and muscle memory and practice to hold together a good formation like that under stress, and they're going to be turning up the intensity of the play act protesters attacking them over time. And also, in large part, that was a recruiting video, I believe. Sorry, I'm getting breaking news. Yep. Yeah, I figured that out. Thank you. I just got a hand-delivered message about my audio mix. The family came to my rescue there. And so that is a fundamental misunderstanding of what that training that everyone is seeing is for. So we're going to look here, tab over, and see some of these comments. And we're going to be going over the misconceptions in these comments. If Patriot Fronts think they're going to be taking on the U.S. government, they're going to need F-15s and maybe a nuke. Well, if a piece of the military breaks off and joins them, they might have those. And so, they are training for war. They're training for a civil war. But they're training for the part of a civil war that is not the first thing that jumps to everyone's mind. They're training for the escalation beforehand and the clamp down afterwards. They're training for street fights, which is how Hitler's SA got started. And they've been doing more than climbing out of their U-Hauls and marching, because they've been attacking people under cover of smoke grenades at a bunch of the marches that they've gone on and getting into fights. But the primary purpose of these marches, these flash mob demonstrations, is they pull together people from a bunch of different states. They go in a line. It gives the impression that their numbers are much greater than they actually are. They do a show of force, they get in the news, and then they vanish before opposition can kick their asses. And that is asserting control. Yes. Yeah, I will tell Tasha, thanks. And that is asserting control of the space. It's asserting control of the street. It's being a visible presence and projecting power is what it's for. Anyone's ever heard of this group? every single group. Just because Thomas E. Woods hasn't heard of it doesn't mean that nobody else has heard of it. They've been around for years. And everybody remembers Vanguard America. And the particular belief that these guys are all feds and this is a honeypot operation seems to be a delusion that mainly conservatives labor under. And that is how I knew that, like, the 2A liberals subreddit, the Second Amendment liberals subreddit, which is a split off from liberal gun owners, had been completely co opted by conservatives. Is the narrative changed from this is why we need semi-automatic rifles, look at this shit, to wow, look at all of these undercover feds, this glows in the dark. And that's how I knew that the forum was now completely full of Republicans. No older, heavier participants, because this is the Select Stormtrooper Division. And it's a recruitment and internal training video, so the entire point is they're trying to make street fighting fascism look sexy, so they're not going to have a bunch of fat old boys front and center, and they're en masse to protect their identity, because there's a great quote from a documentary on Patriot Front and Neo-Nazis in America and Vanguard America, is everybody learned from the Charlottesville protests and the Unite the Right rally that coming out in the open, mask off, and doing shit as a gigantic rally doesn't work, because people got outed, people lost their jobs, and people got arrested. And people who are in the military or police lost their privileged positions that are strategically important to white supremacists. So they know they have to keep it on the down low. That's why the masks. Shin and knee guards are not that expensive. And again, why are the brown shirts called the brown shirts? Matching uniforms. Matching uniforms are sexy. People like uniforms. It's a tactic. It's PR. Having matching shit makes you look intimidating and projects competence even if you don't really have it. It makes you look like more serious business. And we're going to go see. Now, yeah. And this actually brings up something that, makes me question why more conservatives aren't all about attacking these guys in the street. Because if they... Something I noticed in the aftermath of those Elm Fort John Brown Gun Club videos from the drag brunch, where everyone was terrified of masked Antifa showing up with rifles, is... Well, I made eye contact with my dog and lost my train of thought completely. Oh, a lot of conservatives are laboring under the bizarre delusion that police and the feds are protecting leftists. And they really think that Antifa... Oh, thanks for dropping in. Misinformation works. First time chat. Yeah, mind control is real. It makes you a target, and yes, makes you a target, and the Second Civil War ends in the first big city. And now that you bring that up, there is an example of that I'm going to show. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, the internal memo required uniform dress because it's a recruiting video and they want to look professional. They're seeing what is out there in the white supremacist sphere. They're seeing this popular perception, we're going to see more of in a second, of overweight, sloppily dressed, unprofessional, disorganized, haggard old neo-Nazis, and it's not making young people excited to join racist movements. So they're looking at this in the aftermath of Charlottesville, in the aftermath of Unite the Right and Vanguard America getting fucked over. They are looking at it and going, we need to do something different. And thank you very much for I'm just going to go ahead and say something that might be controversial, and this is coming from kind of a long time observation about a lot of people that are libertarians. I think it might have been easier for me to unmisinformation myself because I think I'm on the spectrum. Genuinely. I'm becoming more and more aware that I'm not neurotypical. Sometimes when I'm feeling very socially awkward, I catch myself unintentionally doing like this hand posture just completely subconsciously, and I'm like, stop that. And I think that made it easier because I wasn't as emotionally invested in political ideology as a part of my identity, probably because I'm a little bit autistic. Just straight up, that might be a factor, and it makes me less of a super special self-aware boy. And delusions of grandeur is completely right. Thank you for that. That is giftedness then. And yeah, thank you for the very kind interpretation of that. No, I'm going to be writing quite a bit more about weird little stops on the journey. So we're going to go through the rest of these real quick. Potential whistleblower among them. That's what happened in Coeur d'Alene, Gun d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Constantly on the verge of becoming a neo-Nazi stronghold. I've spent a lot of time at militia trainings in Coeur d'Alene. And I fucking loved seeing those assholes get rolled up when they tried to crash the Pride event. And you don't see much about it because they got arrested on basic level misdemeanors because they left the guns at home. Just like Oath Keepers at the Capitol riot, it was a strategic decision not to go in with the guns right now, because getting caught with the guns that's much bigger charges. So they get away with misdemeanors. They got unmasked in front of everybody in their publicly available mugshots, 30 members from 5 states. And so that's not nothing, but it just wasn't a very West Side Story clips. Worst training I've ever seen, just an idea. Well, you know what? If people are acting on it, then it's not just an idea. And you know what? You know what the first step to being good at something is? Being bad at something. If I repeat this enough times, eventually I might be good at live streaming. I'm definitely bad at it right now. What they're doing right now is training. They're practicing. And if they are allowed to continue, they will continue to improve. Yep. Yep, right now I am a blip on the radar. I expect to have, there's a bunch of interviews coming out, I expect to have more heat on me after Stewart's trial starts. We'll see if I become noteworthy. Really, my personal risk threshold is, especially if Trump is not hogging the headlines to himself and people focus on Stewart and then me, is when I'll be more at risk. And that's where, like, when I move, I'm going to make sure that, like, I pie hole everything and make sure that everything is routed through a good VPN, make sure, double check all of my online security. As it is, I'm already, any pictures that I take and post online anywhere, I'm putting them through metadata scrubber to make sure that I'm not dropping the latitude longitude of my nature hikes or my backyard anytime I post a picture of my dog on any social media, and I've got all my socials locked down by default. But that's a good reminder, is I have a bad habit of dropping off of VPN usage. And here we have DEF CON News with their idiot take that we're going to be going over in a second. But first, let's see which one this is. Okay, that's the Ukraine protest video. Yes, here we go. Discount Ralphie rolls on Trump. I am working right now on a little post about whether Stewart's going to roll on Trump. I like Discount Ralphie. I don't know. It's not going to be a rational decision. It's going to be based on a bunch of Stewart's internal... I actually got it open in that Open Office tab right over there to the left. Not sure what you mean by it's funny because I lived in the house. But no, it's whether Trump gets rolled on by Stewart is going to come down to Stewart's emotions, because Stewart manages his decision making. Oh, nice. Oh, that's neat. That's much more fun trivia than anything I have in my life. The dark clouds over Cleveland. I have never been to the Christmas Story house. I've actually it's actually been one of the only movie set locations that I want to go to after the town they filmed The Blob in. But no, thank you for saying that you got this more on lockdown than you would have considered. Yeah, I've been aware of it for a while, and I know that, like, my long-standing, like, Reddit account that people could figure out identifying information from, I probably need to delete that, because somebody could find it eventually. It's just hard to emotionally let go of that, you know? But I'm trying to be much more on top of my my online security especially. Because if I'm on top of my online security, then physical security matters less. And I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to say that I'm necessarily intimidated or allowing myself to be intimidated by these people, but I'm not going to deny that there's a real threat, and avoiding having that in my front yard wherever I go will be preferable. And I've got to accept that the path I'm going down, which is feeling compelled to speak out about this kind of thing as a matter of basic morality and my view of patriotism, then yeah, thinking critically and making a wise decision. That, thank you for that assessment. Now, hopefully I'll be able to teach a lot of people. I'm going to keep doing that. I have to face basic realities and take extra precautions. So we're going to look real quick at this before we go over to more idiot takes about Patriot Fund. We're going to look real quick.
We want help. We want help. We want help. Help. Now.
There we go. And the audio mixing should be much better. Part of it is I just straight up had the microphone volume turned down too low earlier, and no closed captions, unfortunately.
So do we.
And here they're training for a little bit more of a passive protest, training with the zip ties zip tie handcuffs. Got the phalanx with shotguns loaded with less than lethals in the back. Somebody busted through the lines. That guy getting dragged by his ankle. And so there we see the snap squad appearing from the middle and peeling guys off to the right to be arrested. Now, I will say I have never done riot control training. And you can see the difference in priorities between the United States Marine Corps and the South Korean police we were just looking at. Oh no, that was U.S. Marines. That was not Patriot Front, although disappointingly, Patriot Front probably has a couple of Marine veterans in it. So no, that is what they're aspiring towards, and you can see there's a difference in priority between militarized South Korean police and U.S. Marines. And especially you see, like, the South Koreans, like, that kind of training, every single extremist group is trying to recruit veterans. It's in the top 5 goals for all of them. And that's where I think a bunch of left-wing activists are shooting themselves in the foot by reflexively calling all veterans baby killers and war criminals and not inviting them in. But that's probably mostly the terminally online Twitter crowd. Just in my personal opinion, that's a bad strategy for your activism, especially if you're planning on getting into a bunch of street brawls. So what you see there is much greater reliance on shotguns with less than lethals, down to having basically a 50-50 ratio, and less on these very sophisticated maneuvers for breaking up a crowd with only riot shields and batons. And that is something I remember once, a documentary where they were trying to reconstruct ancient Saxon and Viking tactics from the medieval era and testing them out in, like, historical battles with historical European Martial Arts Association guys and Society for Creative Anachronism dudes, and a bunch of it is reverse engineering the likely tactics of cultures that used shield walls extensively by reverse engineering them from what works for modern riot cops. And that's what they drilled. And that included the snap squad that busts out through a gap in the shield wall and grabs targets and drags them back and drags them back or kills someone, and includes loosening up the formation for more flexibility and to cover a wider area. Now, before we go to this apocalyptic vision of what it would look like in practice, a little blast from the past from when the corrupt puppet government of Ukraine was overthrown, we're going to go look at the idiot hole. I would like to find the guy who, somewhere in America, there is somebody who hates Kamala Harris, and the first insult that came to their mind was not racist or sexist, and they just came up with a regular corrupt politician malicious nickname off the top of their head. Because probably he exists somewhere and he's gonna be a really weird dude. So I just really quick tabbed over to DEF CON News' left-wing violence section. They are not even talking about the anti-fascist rifle teams running security for the drag brunch in Texas. They're talking about this dude, and then crimes. And then they're calling the Buffalo shooter a leftist. And if Lori Lightfoot actually said that, she'd be my favorite person in Minecraft. Yeah, so no, they can't even do a good job of highlighting leftist violence because it would make them look too scary and competent, or they're just slow. Clean-cut cocky boys, I may have to co-opt that. Terrified of this racist scourge. What kind of war are these clowns training for? We're going to see in a minute. No weapons whatsoever, but do have cute matching shields, like riot police. Shield war, and they don't want to get caught with their cockies down. You mean like a riot? Matching shields, sinking all their money in matching shields and matching preppy outfits. In a minute, I'm going to show you the manufacturing process for these shields. I forgot to pull up in my tabs. So, the thing is, the shields are the way that they are because they're very cheap. They're very cheap. They function for the job at hand. They're kind of flimsy. The edges are very likely sharp, so they'll cut your hands if you try to grab them without gloves. They do the job, though, and there's just a guy who makes them in his garage. And that's just what he does. He makes these shields in his garage. And he's one of the higher-ups in the group, and that's his job. They're pretty good at repelling a single person who isn't trying very hard. One-man slacker, insurrection, or training for... That's just the beginner training for maintaining your lines while somebody is hitting the shield, and then you turn up the intensity as it goes on. Then your graduating class has to deal with an exercise like what we saw a little bit earlier with the South Korean police. So it does look less like preparing for war and more like police civil unrest training. Why would they be trying to contain a protest instead of training to overthrow the government? Because they're not training to fight the government. They're betting on President Ron DeSantis or Governor Mastriano either directly calling them up and deputizing them or looking the other way. This is training for after the capture of American political power. They're young, fit, and clean cut because this is a select group. They're deliberately trying to buck the stereotype of older white people, overweight members, and scraggly bearded inked up dudes. We can't see if they have ink because they're all wearing long sleeves. They're all wearing full body clothing, including the mask, so we can't see any identifying marks. So tattoo free is complete conjecture. Like, none of these guys are in t-shirts. Terrible audio quality. They're all in long sleeves and raincoats. And this is also kind of cheap clothing. Like, this is the cheapest that you can outfit a large group of people with matching uniforms. This is all off-the-shelf stuff that you can sew your emblem onto. That's kind of last generation militia. That's like legacy militia. And it's still around. That's the traditional militia movement, is looking to fight the government. Ridiculously underpowered. Yeah, if they're talking about if you're talking about the level of resistance they're facing in training, yeah, this is not great realistic training for facing a riot. And you can see that it hasn't really been working for them by how often they're getting their asses kicked. Just by regular street dudes whenever they hold their marches and then counter-protesters show up. And that's the thing, is they're just not planning. Are they going to swat away the tank shells? They're not planning on getting shot at with tanks. They're planning on somebody ordering the tanks to stand down somewhere else, and they're going to be facing their opposition. If they're not planning on having the tanks on their side, they're planning on facing the opposition in some kind of designated free fight zone that the cops and military stay out of, like us. That the police and military will stay out of, like in Berkeley, and doing that to project strength and show that they are better by winning a street brawl for public relations purposes. Yeah, and that's the good thing, is I am also glad they're telling us exactly how they are training. And they're making a pretty heavy bet on right-wing authoritarians capturing the United States government in the future. Because if it doesn't go their way, they're going to have to switch it up. One thing I will say, I will bet money that all of these dudes also have overlapping membership with other cellular militia groups where they train with rifles. There is a very deliberate wall of separation, I believe, that you have to keep up between your street fighting battalion and militant training for gunfights and kinetic warfare. Because mixing in lethal force training makes you scary. It puts you on people's radar as a militant terrorist group. If you are running around the country with your little shields and you're getting into fights for PR purposes, you can do that to build your brand, project strength, project control of the streets, and make people, like when the Patriot Front flyers show up on all the lampposts in your town with the razors taped to the back of them so you might cut your hands if you pull them down. It makes you wonder how many people around you are sympathizers or members. It makes you paranoid. And then while that's going on, I would bet anything. The cognitive age of 8-year-olds, yeah, well, here's the thing. Hitler's inner circle were lunatics. Foreign journalists who met Hitler assumed that they were going to be talking to a smart guy who was playing a character on the radio. And then they were shocked that Hitler, in private, was basically a caricature of himself. Yeah, they follow orders just fine. Yeah, that's all they have to do. All they have to do is follow orders just fine. And that's the reality of authoritarian movements, is they're clowns. They're clowns, and they're weird, and they're prone to infighting, and they're dumb. Yeah, Trump is also cartoonish, and that's exactly how foreign journalists thought of Hitler. They all thought that he was going to turn out to be a smart guy who was playing a character as a public persona, and then they realized it was just him all the way down, and they were like, what the hell? And then he murdered 12 million people. Not to mention the millions more in casualties from war, just murdered 12 million people in extermination camps and the Holocaust of the bullet alone. That's just the executions carried out by gas chamber and SS firing squads. Before you get into the death toll from his wars. And part of that is what's causing people to discount these guys. They look ridiculous, so people will make the mistake of not taking them seriously. So the way to think of it is, how much would they worry? Are we on the verge of letting all that death be in vain? I think more than at any point in human history, we have the benefit of hindsight. And the language, thanks to people like Orwell, the language for... thanks again, that was a great history lesson, thank you. I hope the ranting wasn't not too info-dumpy, but the language and the ideas and the concepts of how authoritarians work, these studies on the authoritarian personality type, and the 14 characteristics of a fascist movement, these are more widely known than ever before. The people in the middle, the opposition is aware of what they're facing. The people in the middle, whose silent, unquestioning consent is required for a murderous authoritarian regime, have more access to this information, are more likely to see it coming. So I think we're in a really dangerous place. I think if Trump had come around, whoever the next authoritarian was, if Trump had lost the 2016 election like he planned, had launched his media platform, and had poisoned American popular culture with crazy, full tilt, OAN style, just madness on a scale that not even Fox News feels comfortable with, through a Clinton presidency, that would have set up Greg Abbott or Ron DeSantis, and then we would have been stuck with them until they died, one way or another. That would have been how it would have gone, because after a Clinton presidency, we would have we would have been sleepwalking into a dictatorship through apathy and through the creeping oncoming of Trumpism, setting the stage for the next authoritarian. And Mitch McConnell's plan to capture the Supreme Court would have carried on a longer time scale. He would have continued to block. Yeah, that's really, I think electing Trump might have just been a really crappy first generation vaccine. I recommend the old TV show Sliders. I've seen bits of that. My only pop culture awareness of it is one of the writers got really mad at an actress and wrote her off the show by sending her to a caveman dictatorship breeding camp just because he hated the actress. And I haven't watched very much of it. But yeah, it's something I've meant to catch up on. Yeah, that was a huge thing. That's what I really think. I think they got so overconfident because of this sudden surge in Trumpism that was carried by Russian election meddling, Russian disinformation, and the channeling through techniques gleaned from Cambridge Analytica by the likes of Steve Bannon. Yeah, that's I'm more aware of the nasty undercurrents under popular TV shows than I am of TV shows. I got really interested in that kind of thing after Dan Schneider's weird underage foot fetish started gaining traction, and I looked back at all the Nickelodeon shows that I watched as a kid and realized how weird it was. I started to get interested in how much of that I was missing. He might very well, if Trump himself does not plan to claim that, I'm quite certain that Trump will brag this was his plan to save democracy. If Trump himself does not claim that, then his followers will continue to do that for generations in the multi-generational QAnon churches that are only now being founded, that I foresee are coming, is that they will say that he was playing 5D time traveler chess to save democracy the entire time. So what we got was this wave of Trumpism that caused the GOP to massively overestimate the energy they harnessed. They massively, already in a bubble, kind of caught up in a delusion that they're the silent majority, even though they know they're rigging and gerrymandering and voter suppressing everything to ensure that they win. Being inside the bubble and seeing all the Trump rallies and the MAGA flags, it probably worked on them to create the perception of a Republican majority the same way it worked on everybody else. And they got overconfident and they went for their plan way too fast. And then Trump is stupid, self-centered, and uncontrollable. Especially putting a super malignant narcissist in the most high-power narcissistic fuel position on the planet. Like, he might as well have had a permanent IV line of heroin just being dragged behind him through his entire time in the White House. Just constant junkie fuel. And so they went nuts. And now, while they were capitalizing on Trump, Trump was busy committing capital crimes, allegedly, that he was too stupid to cover up. He was committing massive graft and fraud that he was too stupid to cover up. And cutting his own knees, cutting himself off at the knees with his ego, while the GOP were betting everything on him to advance their authoritarian agenda and get the oligarchy that they wanted like 10 years early. And now they're like Briar Rabbit. They've outsmarted themselves into getting their skulls cracked against a wagon wheel. Yes, exactly. Yeah, you got the gist of it. And GOP trapped because the extra base of voters Trump brought in are what hold them in power, or go against Trump, they get primaried or lose enough votes to fail even gerrymandered districts. Yes, exactly. This is also why I think it's a huge mistake the Democrats who registered Republican to vote for crazy candidates. Right now, being a sane candidate, you could lose a GOP primary, but crazy candidates are more likely to win in the general as Republicans. That's just the way that it is, because crazy candidates are energizing to the now completely psycho GOP base. Milquetoast Republicans are has-beens. Like, they're a dinosaur. Milquetoast, centrist, reach across the aisle, fuddy-duddy, old-styled Republicans. Thank you. That's a lot of confidence. I feel too uncomfortable with myself to accept. I appreciate you. Misinformation works. Oh no, more. But they are in this position now where most of the GOP has to double down on crazy. No problem. You throw me off that bad. And that's the other thing, is this, and the sickening anger, especially. I think the Democrats have. You didn't throw me off. I have a reflexive. My reaction to compliments is reflexive deflection. I'm working on it in therapy. The I think right just recently the Democrats have turned it around. They're in array. That's as the meme says. Dark Brandon has switched on. They switched up his medication. Um, but especially with like the joining hands and singing after the Roe overturn, and all of that was sickening to many voters. And now more than ever, there is more awareness of how broken the two-party system is, how badly strategic voting sucks, more awareness of gerrymandering, more awareness of the electoral system, more awareness of local government, and more awareness of how government works in general, along with more awareness of how authoritarianism works. 6 years ago, how many Americans knew who the Speaker of the House was at any given time? How many Americans knew how reconciliation worked? How many Americans knew what Senate minority and majority meant? Not very many. Very few. That has changed. And that's Trump's fault. That is Trump's fault because everybody is scared and angry and focused on political knife fights that are, in past generations... Yeah, Boner got the fuck out. Yeah. In past generations, all of that had been forgotten about because of apathy. It was all behind the scenes. Nobody fucking watched C-SPAN. Like, aliens watch C-SPAN. They try to blend in with humanity. That's it. The entire audience is reptoids. Now, people care. The J6 committee hearings brought in more viewers than Monday Night Football. And I think ultimately can only be a good thing. So, before we run out of time, I'm going to go over a little bit of more of this idiocy. That is the dumbest statement I've ever seen in my fucking life. They generally show up somewhere in a U-Haul truck, which is deniable and anonymous, so nobody can trace their license plates. Whenever they show up with their personal vehicles, they get pictures of their license plates taken. They don't carry white supremacist flags or imagery. They don't chant white supremacist things. Their pamphlets have their website. Their website is bloodandsoil.com, which is a Nazi slogan. Their flags include desecrating the flag my grandfather carried onto Iwo Jima with the literal fascies, the symbol of Italian fascism that was the personal emblem of Benito Mussolini, who helped invent the term. Nazis were not the only fascists. Italy was there too. As much as they would like you to forget about it, Italy was there. Italian fascists were essential in writing down and codifying the core of fascist ideologies in the 20s and 30s. Root beard? I'm not sure what that's in reference to. So yeah, they are carrying around white supremacist symbols, and they're attempting to create association in the minds of Americans between their white supremacist symbols and the United States flag. They're attempting to do a brand capture of patriotism for white supremacy, and the left is a bit guilty of letting them get away with it. I think anti-fascists should start carrying the flag around. I think so. Like, I don't know if I'd identify as I frequently get social democrat and democratic socialist mixed up. Whichever one Orwell was writing in favor of. Somewhere between that and left-wing anarchism is where I'm at. And I see the patriotism and the promise of the United States and the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the legacy of the Scottish Enlightenment and liberal democracy as an unrealized ideal that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the fine words in the Declaration of Independence were high ideals that people like Thomas Jefferson failed to live up to. Well, except for the super unfortunate anti-Semitism, which is Marx was also anti-Semitic, of people like Thomas Paine walked the walk his whole life. And that's what I see in the flag, is the imperfect legacy of people like Thomas Paine. I see that now we have a chance to be patriotic, not to the country as it is now, not to the... I hesitate to call myself an egalitarian. I used to call myself an egalitarian when I was still mired in anti-SJW Gamergate bullshit, because I fundamentally saw male feminists as people who had to crawl on their knees and apologize for being male. And I see egalitarian used as a clapback against anti-racists in the same way that All Lives Matter is. And it's unfortunately a brand that has been captured kind of like the way I'm neither left nor right, or I'm centrist, always actually means right wing. That's how I see it being used, as lots of anti-SJW intellectual dark web. Yeah, labels suck. They're co-opted. Authoritarians, all they fucking do is co-opt labels. They steal culture because they're unoriginal and they can't think of anything for themselves. All they do is co-opt and destroy. The authoritarian personality is fundamentally like the villains in Lord of the Rings, where they're unable to create for themselves and can only corrupt, destroy, and imitate. Hitler and Morgoth exist in the same strain of ideals, which is attempting to steal the creative work of others. My mom's been getting a lot into different reincarnation theories and researching them a lot. That's a good. I am a sentient thing that came into existence by no apparent choice of my own, and I strongly suspect that other sentient things had no choice, so I treat those sentient things as nothing less than my equal. Which is a good philosophy. The thing about labels is I believe they're kind of a necessary evil, because labels are an identifier, and they're a strong identifier that can be used to broadcast to like-minded people in a handful of words. They can be put into slogans that can be chanted. They can be put in a three-word phrase. Three-word phrase, which is something Donald Trump was excellent at. And so, like, that's why I've come around to, you know what, I'm going to go for broke. I'm going to call myself an anti-racist male feminist, and I'm going to call myself a socialist, because there's no point in hiding my power level at this point in the game. So, you've got this guy deliberately misunderstanding everything in an attempt to... this weird mix of messaging where he's simultaneously attempting to completely downplay Patriot Front as a threat and call into question whether they're actually racist, almost as if he's engaging in apologetics while at the same time calling them a Fed operation. And there's now saying that because they carry American flags, that means they're FBI, because the American flag represents the U.S. government, and the FBI is part of the U.S. government, which is possibly the dumbest thing I have ever read in my life. And I believe what's up with the Patriot Front Manifesto is that this manifesto was published while the group was still calling itself Vanguard America, before the disastrous Charlottesville and Unite the Right rally, and has since been taken down because they've tried to distance themselves from that brand in the wake of vehicular homicide. And equal, and you mean equal in right to exist, yes. And the ongoing threat of white supremacy is pretty self-evident because white supremacists have killed more cops than ISIS has. They've killed more Americans than ISIS has. They have engaged in more attacks on the U.S. government. The only way you can say this with a straight face is if you believe that the Oklahoma City bombing was fake, and not even 3%er co-founder Mike Vanderbilt believed that the Oklahoma City bombing was fake. Oh, over here I have a video I was going to put on, but we're running out of time, where my mom has been uploading videos from Bundy Ranch that she's been finding on Stewart's mini memory cards that he left lying around. So real quick, we're going to, and this is ear-splitting applause. This is what people are saying is the kind of fight that Patriot Front has training to suppress.
Yeah, no, you know what? Too bad. You're going at it. Let's go. We're going down.
So,
Ready? Come on, you're going down. No, I don't want. Ready? I don't want to fight. Hey,
Hey, buddy, you all right? You okay?
better question is, are you? There's more where that came from if you don't watch your mouth. Turkey.
Wow, that was so brave.
So that is what people think. So I got French on the Floss and they're NCIS because you know Admiralty. Oh. The unfortunate fact is that there is a huge overlap between people who believe in the gold fringe and the people Patriot Front wants to recruit. So, if they tried to put gold fringe on their flag, they would probably get a bunch of guys that would leave. So that is what people on, like, Reddit are saying Patriot Front is training for. What we're actually seeing is part-time weekend training whenever they can do it on a budget for this. And so the thing to remember when you're looking at these training videos and you're looking at their shaky formations and it's funny, is imagine that you're at a protest and then all of a sudden they're in front of you and they have riot shields and batons and you don't. And more to the point, they're planning on having professional riot police on their side, and then they get sent in to do the dirty work away from the cameras while the police stand back and stand by. What they're planning for is to here be in the position of these riot cops and force all of you to be the guys behind the barricades, throwing the Molotovs and the fireworks in an attempt to stop a fascist takeover of the United States. That's their goal. this is what it takes. Especially if it doesn't escalate to gunfights. This is what it looks like when you are unwilling to accept an authoritarian government. So, fundamentally what they're planning for is they have crap shields, but they can train with them. They're training on the weekends, but they're coming together for these flash mob marches and getting into low-intensity fights with bystanders who are less well-armed and trained than they are, and the best training for a fight is an easy fight. So they do their little drills like you see in the video, and then they go out and they have to fend off people who attack them on sight because they're racist, and they learn from it. And if they don't get run the fuck off, like they were in Philadelphia, they can use it as a propaganda victory. And they're doing that because the best way to prepare for anything is incremental, consistent effort over time. They're doing their little training, they're doing it consistently, week in and week out. They're improving the more time that they have so that when that happens, they're ready. And then when the day comes, they're likely planning on being able to have friends get them riot gear from police armories. They're planning on having, like the riots that started the Troubles in North Ireland, the most recent modern round, where North Ireland security forces were going and joining Ulster nationalist hit squads after hours, out of uniform, and using their riot control training to crush Irish Catholic protesters and kill people in street fights. And then that escalated to a low-intensity shooting war. That's what the preparation is for. So, what we're not seeing is when the uniforms are gone, when the cameras are not rolling, when they're no longer associated with training places and their Patriot Front command structure, what we're not seeing is all the training with lethal weapons they are probably also doing on the side, kept deliberately distant from their Street Fighter persona. But a lethal, full-scale war for the future of America is heavily implied in all of their materials. So they're not a joke. And if they look incompetent right now, that means that you have a head start to get together with your friends and take up a completely unrelated hobby, like joining your local SCA and role-playing Vikings in the park at full force, with people who can execute a shield wall much better than that. That's where I'm leaving off. I am not in an area where I've been able to find a lot of other young people who believe as I do, who are not at least somewhat drinking the Fox News Kool-Aid. I'm continuously trying to get together bro meetup tactical shooting groups with friends that I know are not insane and will not join death squads or lynch mobs. And I'm going to try to get involved with local airsoft guys because that's a great way to figure out whether you're taking a corner wrong, is if you get smacked with the plastic pellets. There's a lot of suspicion I'm on the right track. Thank you. Yeah, and we'll see. And that's also, really, if I'm going to be putting my face out there and calling out white supremacists and authoritarians and possibly pissing off the governor of my state, who's best friends with all these fucking losers, my goal is twofold. I want to explain, because I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding, in people that oppose fascism and the militia movement of what it's like on the inside, what these authoritarian movements cloaking themselves in American patriotism are like. And also, I want to reach edge cases who were like me, whose morality is incompatible with an ethno-state, who are caught up in the propaganda. And in order to do that, I have to walk the walk. Because most people's perception of male feminist, leftist, socialist is everybody's limp-wristed imitation of a coffee shop liberal from a Black Rifle Coffee Company video, which is not an accurate perception, but the accurate perception needs to be put out there in order to counteract that. And the most that I can do to support that is do it myself, as poorly as I do. Met a lot of streamers on Twitch that meet that description. Well, stereotypes exist for a reason. Somewhere in Stuart's book storage is a guide on manliness that is essentially one enormous rant that this old conservative boomer has against a coffee shop liberal who wears plaid that he got into a Twitter argument with. And halfway through the book is an enormous section that is literally just copies of his Twitter argument, whose picture is on the back page of the book. It's kind of a precursor to the latest, I can't believe I forgot the name of the Harry Potter woman. Jane Wizard School's latest book that is all about people being mean to somebody on Twitter over transphobia. It's an amazing prototype of that. So I'm going to call it here. Ran quite a bit over time, so I'll save my dramatic readings. Yes. I will save my dramatic readings of civil unrest and right-wing fiction for another day, and I'll catch you guys when I stream from my new digs. And as soon as I figure out how to look at whispers, I will check that out. Alright, thank you guys, and same time next week. You have a good night. End stream.